He was just a quiet old man at the shooting range, limping, silent, ignored, until a young SEAL recruit spotted the faded tattoo on his arm, an eagle clutching a trident worn by time but undeniable. Then everything stopped. Mockery turned to silence. Respect turned to fear. Within days, secret files leaked, a government cover-up was exposed, and a military operation long buried roared back into the light. But it all began with a single shot, and the quiet man who finally spoke. The young man beside me flinched when I chambered the round. I didn't blame him. The weight of a 308 bolt-action rifle is different in the hands of an old man. It's not just the steel and walnut wood, it's the decades that press into the trigger, the wars buried behind the scope. I could feel the boy's stare, his curiosity tangled with a hint of annoyance. Most people at this range came to show off, to talk loud, to teach someone something. I came to be silent. "Need help with the scope, sir?" the recruit asked. His voice was respectful, but I could hear it. The unspoken old man floating beneath his breath. I didn't look at him, just adjusted the bipod and went prone again. Click, deep breath, exhale, bang. The shot rang through the air and landed exactly where I wanted it, the center of the farthest steel plate. A clear, sharp ring echoed across the barren New Mexico desert. That was my hello. The boy, tall, young, square-jawed, maybe 22, whistled low. "Nice shot." I said nothing, just adjusted for wind. He watched for another moment, then wandered back to his group of 3 other young guys. All of them looked military, fresh, haircuts like buzzed promises posture, like they were still in the classroom at Bud S. Navy SEAL hopefuls, probably. Green still smelling like textbook sweat and idealism. I used to walk like that once. Now I just limp. It wasn't the limp that bothered them. It was the silence. But what broke the day wasn't the heat or the targets, or even the silence. It was the moment one of them walked behind me when I was reloading and saw it. My tattoo. On my left shoulder, mostly hidden beneath the edge of a weathered flannel sleeve, was the faded burnt black ink of an eagle grasping a trident, wings spread to stars above. SEAL insignia. Not a flashy version, just the real one. Earned in sweat, pain, blood, and silence. Inked under a makeshift lamp in a tent outside Ramadi. Nothing fancy, just a mark of survival. I didn't see his face at first, but I heard his breath catch. Then the group went quiet. "Hey, Sir?" The one who spotted it said, walking closer now, eyes wide. "Is that—" I didn't answer. He knelt beside me, not with disrespect, with awe. "Did you serve? I mean, that's a SEAL tattoo. You don't just wear that." Now the others gathered. They weren't mocking anymore. Something shifted in the wind. "Name's Mason," he said quickly. "SEAL candidate. Class 381. These are my brothers Danny, Jax, and Omar. We just started Phase 1. Phase 1. I finally muttered, voice dry as desert dust. "Still smiling, huh?" They laughed nervously. I finally looked up, and that's when the smallest one, Omar, froze, staring not at my face, but at my hands. The scars, a lattice of burns, cuts, and something that looked surgical. Years of war, and something darker. "You're not just any SEAL, are you?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I just stood the rifle slung over my back and limped toward the edge of the range. But I could feel it. The shift in air. The way they looked at me now, not as an old man with a bolt-action rifle, but as a mystery. As something that didn't quite belong to this world of plastic targets and civilian chatter. I reached the bench, poured myself a lukewarm cup of black coffee from my thermos and sat. That's when Mason walked over again. "Sir," he said carefully, "my dad was a Marine. He always told me, if you ever see an old man alone at the range, especially one with that tattoo, you shut your mouth and watch." I raised an eyebrow. Smart man. He also said they don't talk about what they did because nobody could understand it anyway. He was right. Mason nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. He sat beside me. Quietly. Just him. A long moment passed. Then he asked, "What was it like?" I didn't answer for a while. Just stared out at the empty sky. What part? Being in it. The teams. I took a deep breath and said the first real sentence I had said all day. It wasn't like what they show in movies. He waited. It wasn't all brothers and banter. It wasn't all flags and glory. Some days it was heat and rot and silence. Other days it was blood and betrayal and the crushing sound of things you can't ever fix. Mason's face stiffened. The wind seemed to go colder. "I'm not trying to scare you, son," I added. "But if you think earning that Trident is the hardest part, wait until you have to live with it." He swallowed. Then something strange. A voice barked from behind us. "You're full of it, old man." The range officer. His name was Kurt. Mid-40s. Civvy. Loud. Always wore Oakleys and acted like the sandpit was his personal kingdom. He strutted over arms crossed. "That tattoo don't mean crap if it's fake. Had a guy here last month who said he was Force Recon. Turns out he was a mechanic at Pendleton." I stared at him slow. "You accusing me of lying?" Kurt shrugged. "Just saying that's a big claim for someone who shows up alone and doesn't say a word. Could be stolen valor." The boys shifted. Mason looked like he wanted to jump in, but I raised a hand. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said coldly. Kurt smirked. "Nah, but if you're wearing that eagle, you damn well better have the DD-2 F-14 to back it up." I stood, my limp more noticeable now. And that's when I said something I hadn't said in years. "I don't carry papers. I carry ghosts." Kurt scoffed. "Cute?" Mason stepped forward now. "Sir, with all respect, this man's the real deal." Kurt turned to him. "And how would you know?" Mason hesitated. Then he said, because I've never heard silence that loud. Kurt raised an eyebrow but backed off. Still, the moment was broken. The boys wandered back to their lane. But Mason didn't. He sat beside me again and quietly asked, "You ever lose someone?" I looked down. Every time I blink. That was when he saw my other tattoo. A small number, Roman numerals. 16. 15. I nodded. Teammates. Dead. He said nothing after that. Only watched me reload. Watched me aim again. And when I hit that last steel plate 850 yards in the wind, he stood and saluted. But what he didn't see was what was inside the truck parked at the edge of the range. The file I carried. The old one. The one stamped classified on every page. The one I had decided finally to send. Not for me. For them. Because war never ends. It just finds new names to haunt. I didn't go to the range the next day, or the day after that. It wasn't because of Kurt and his mouth. I'd heard worse been spat on in airports in the 70s accused of murder by bureaucrats who never left their desks, even had my medals called souvenirs once. No, what kept me away wasn't the insult. It was the boy's eyes. Mason. I'd seen that look before on young faces too eager to prove something they didn't understand. And I knew what came after disillusionment, loss, the sick ache of truth cracking through a heart not yet calloused. But something else clawed at me too. That file in my truck. It hadn't been touched in years. I kept it buried beneath a pile of tools and a folded American flag, the same one handed to me at Jacob's funeral. My last deployment had left more than scars. It left questions. And the file. It held answers I wasn't sure the world was ready to hear. Still I drove, out of town, toward the outskirts of Santa Fe, toward the Veterans Affairs office. I parked in the same spot I'd used years ago, back when I still believed in systems. The receptionist didn't recognize me, and I didn't expect her to. I waited silently in the corner, holding the worn file in my lap like it might explode. They finally called my name Mr. Granger. That's me, William Granger. But they all just called me Ghost, even my COs, because I was good at disappearing, slipping behind enemy lines, melting into nothingness, and returning with eyes that had seen too much. Inside the small VA office, the air was stale. A young case officer, fresh out of grad school by the looks of her, offered a polite smile and gestured for me to sit. "What can I do for you today, Mr. Granger?" I placed the file on the table. "Read it." She hesitated. "Is this personal?" "It's national." She opened it slowly. Her eyes scanned the first few pages. Then they widened. "This is," she stammered, flipping through names, coordinates, top secret insignias. "This operation, this was scrubbed." "Exactly." She looked up at me. "But if this is real, it implicates people who don't want to be remembered." She closed the file. "What do you want me to do with this?" "Release it. Through the channels, redacted if you must. But let the truth breathe." Her face changed. Serious now. "You realize what you're asking could open investigations. People could go to prison." "Good," I said simply. She swallowed hard. "I'll need time. You've got a week." She nodded, but something in her eyes told me she was scared. I didn't blame her. The ghosts don't like being summoned. That night I sat on my porch with a flask in the wind. I could still hear them, sometimes the boys, laughing in the sand boots, thudding in rhythm, the static of comms in my ear. And then gunfire. Silence. The dragging weight of a body you used to call brother. 15 tattoos, one for each. Jacob's face came clearest. He was the youngest, barely 20 when the blackout hit. We'd been in a compound near Herat chasing a ghost of intel when things went south. Intel, we later learned, was fake. He bled out in my arms while we waited for an exfil that never came. I carried that mission's truth on my back like a coffin for years. Now maybe I could finally set it down. 3 days later, Mason found me. I was loading groceries into my truck when his shadow hit the asphalt. "Sir?" I turned slowly. The boy looked different. More serious. Less green. "How'd you find me?" He shrugged. "Asked around. This town's small. Veterans know veterans." I nodded. And he hesitated, then held up a small envelope. "My dad." I took it, opened it. Inside was a single photo. A man in desert camo, holding a young boy. Tattoo visible on his arm, same eagle, same trident. "You served with him," Mason said. I stared at the photo. My throat clenched. "Stanley Bishop. My father. He died in '06. I was 9. I remembered now. Bishop had been a medic. Quiet, loyal, carried a journal with him everywhere. He'd taken a bullet shielding a child in Basra. "He was a good man," I said softly. "I never got to know him," Mason said, eyes glassy. "But I swore I'd wear that same trident. Stand where he stood." "You sure about that?" I asked. "The trident isn't just an emblem. It's a curse." "I don't care." I looked at him and saw myself. Later that evening, I brought him to my shed. Inside were old crates' footlockers and memories I had tried to bury. I opened one. Inside lay faded uniforms, a rusted K-bar, a cracked satellite phone, and medals that felt like lead. But what caught his eye was the box of letters, all from the team I explained. Before every mission we'd write one, just in case. Mason picked one up. To Mom it read. He looked at me. "Do you ever read them?" "No," I said, "because they weren't written for the living." He nodded slowly, holding one close like a relic. Then I told him about the mission, the lie, how Command fed us false intel to provoke a firefight that would justify drone strikes on a village they wanted cleared for a pipeline deal. "How do you live with that?" he asked, voice trembling. "I don't," I answered. "I just outlive it." The next day, the file leaked. Not from the VA, from somewhere deeper. Someone had eyes. News vans showed up at the range. Kurt looked pale as chalk. He avoided me. But Mason, he stood tall, proud, until the black SUV rolled in. 2 men in suits. Federal. They walked straight to me. "Mr. Granger," one said, "we need you to come with us." "For what?" "National security." Behind them, Mason stepped forward. "He's done nothing wrong." They ignored him. "We ask you come peacefully." I sighed, then turned to Mason. "Finish Phase 1. Don't lose your soul doing it." And to the suits, I simply said, "Let's go see the ghosts then." They didn't cuff me, didn't read me my rights. But that didn't matter. When you've seen the inside of black sites, you know when you're not free. The SUV didn't take the highway. We went off-road after Albuquerque, through scrubland, through silence, until the sky vanished behind concrete and shadows. The facility had no sign, just a blast door that groaned open like something from the Cold War. Inside, it was colder than the desert night. The 2 men never gave their names, but I named them in my head. The taller one, Vulture. The quiet one, Rat. Both wore suits, 2 clean faces, 2 smooth, and hands that hadn't held a rifle. We walked down a corridor that swallowed sound. At the end, a steel door. They opened it, gestured. I stepped inside. The room was plain, no windows, 1 table, 2 chairs, and a camera in the corner blinking red like a bloodshot eye. Mr. Granger Vulture began sitting. Rat stood by the door. "We've reviewed the documents you attempted to circulate. Some very serious allegations." "They're not allegations," I said flatly. "They're truths." He offered a smirk that didn't touch his eyes. "Some truths are dangerous. So are lies," I countered. "And 15 men are dead because of one." He tapped the table. "This operation, Black Phantom, was decommissioned, redacted, and sealed by the Defense Intelligence Oversight Committee. You signed an NDA. "I signed to protect lives," I said, voice rising. "Not to protect cowards with oil contracts." Rat shifted. Something about my tone made him flinch. Vulture leaned back. "You think exposing this helps anyone? It gives the dead a voice. They're already buried." I stood slowly, my knee aching. Then let them speak from the dirt. Silence fell. Thick, long. Finally, Vulture exhaled. "You're not here to be punished, Mr. Granger. We just need your cooperation." "With what?" He slid a photo across the table. My heart skipped. It was Mason, but not from the range. It was surveillance outside my shed, holding one of the mission letters. "You've been mentoring a SEAL candidate," Vulture said coolly, "sharing classified intel, violating your clearance." "He's the son of a teammate," I growled. "That doesn't change protocol. Neither does morality, apparently." Rat finally spoke. "He's being watched. We suggest you cease all communication." I stared at the photo again and saw what they feared. Legacy. Truth passed like a torch. "You want silence," I said. But that's not what you're going to get. They let me go at dawn. No charges. Just a warning. A cold wind trailing behind me as I stepped out into the barren lot, the sky cracked with light. They thought they'd broken something, but all they did was confirm what I already knew. The truth scared them more than war ever had. Back in town, the world kept spinning. The diner served stale coffee. The mail still came late. But beneath the ordinary, something shifted. Mason was waiting outside my house. I saw them take you. Yeah, I nodded. They offered me a quiet death. You good? I looked at him. No, but I'm awake. He followed me inside. I opened the safe behind the shelf and pulled out the last box, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a VHS tape, labeled OP Black Phantom. Helmet Cam, Delta 6. Only copy Mason asked. I nodded. We sat, played it. The screen flickered. Then came the footage of dusty village children playing. Radio chatter. Laughter. Then the airstrike. The confusion. The screams. The realization there were no insurgents. Just families. A teammate's voice we've been lied to. Another abort. Then silence. And Jacob's face, bloodied, pale. The video ended. Mason sat in stunned silence. I let him feel it. Let him carry it for a moment. I want to do something, he whispered. Not yet. But you're still becoming. Don't let anger make your decisions. He choked. I need to be more than this uniform. I need to stand for something real. You will, I said. The news broke that evening. Not from me. Someone inside the system had leaked the helmet cam. Maybe the VA caseworker. Maybe a conscience in the Pentagon. Maybe the ghost of someone long gone whispering from the shadows. But it aired. The tape. The name Operation Black Phantom. The victims. The cover-up. The oil deal. The 15. The fallout was swift. Senators called for hearings. The Defense Department issued cold legal statements. A few names were suspended. One resigned. But most of them disappeared. Into shadows. The way they always do. Kurt didn't look at me when I returned to the range. He just nodded. And walked away. But the others, veterans, started coming. Old ones, young ones, silent ones. They came to shake my hand. To sit with me at the bench. To tell their stories for the first time. Mason stood among them, taller now. Not because he was stronger, but because he was carrying something heavier. And still walking. That night I lit 15 candles on the porch. One for each. Mason sat beside me, holding a new patch in his hand. Seal insignia. Freshly earned. He placed it beside the old tattoo on my arm. You passed Phase 1, I said. Phase 2 starts Monday. You ready? He looked at the candles. At least now I know what I'm fighting for. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. What happens now? I answered with a whisper. We keep going. We tell the truth. And we remember. The wind blew gently, as if it agreed. Some nights the wind howls like it's morning. Other nights it sings. That evening, as Mason flew back to Coronado to begin his next training phase, I stood alone on the range. The sun dipped low, staining the desert in orange blood. My rifle rested on the table untouched. I wasn't there to shoot. I was there to listen. To the ghosts. Every veteran knows when silence becomes too loud to ignore. It creeps under your skin. It walks with your shadow. That night I wasn't haunted by Jacob's face or the sound of gunfire. I was haunted by what had begun. The truth was out, and it was unraveling things much larger than me. The news networks had moved on quickly like they always do. One moment you're breaking headlines, the next you're a ticker at the bottom of the screen. But deep within the military community, something else was happening. Emails, encrypted messages, phone calls on burner phones. The old guard was waking up. From Louisiana to Virginia, retired SEALs, Delta operators, recon Marines men with calloused hands and quiet guilt were reaching out. Some wanted to help. Some just wanted to be heard. All of them had stories. Buried ops. Friendly fire disguised as enemy ambushes. Medals given for silence. Lives traded for oil votes or promotions. I kept a log of each call, printed every email. Mason had started it as a folder he titled The Ones Who Remember. Now it was an archive, a living wound. 2 weeks after the leak, someone broke into my shed. They didn't steal anything, just turned the place upside down. Message received. The next morning, I found my front door handle dusted with white powder. Not the kind you snort, the kind that burns when it hits sweat. They were trying to scare me. They didn't know I hadn't felt fear since I was 19, and buried alive in Fallujah for 6 hours. I cleaned the door, reinforced the windows, bought a new lockbox, but mostly I called an old friend. His name was Cole, Master Chief Everett Cole. Retired SEAL Team 2. Silver Star. 5 deployments. One eye gone. A voice like sandpaper on steel. He answered on the 3rd ring. Ghost. Need you, I said. Where? Home. He arrived 48 hours later. No questions. Just a duffel bag and a scar that ran across his throat like a second smile. You stirring up hornets again? He asked, lighting a cigar. Not stirring, just holding a mirror. He grinned. Still poetic. That's why they hated you in Team Room 4. Together, we reinforced the house. Not because we feared attack, but because we knew the rules. When the system can't silence you with words, it tries with shadows. Cole didn't flinch. He was the kind of man who slept with one eye open and a Beretta under his pillow. The kind who believed in God, but only trusted bullets. One night we heard the SUV again. The same one. No headlights. Just engine hum and intimidation. Cole looked at me. You want me to greet them? No, I said. Let them know we're not running. I walked out slow. Stood on the porch with my thermos. They didn't step out. Just rolled down the window. A different man this time. Younger, smoother. Mr. Granger, he said calmly, we want to avoid escalation. Then stop escalating. You're building something dangerous. This archive of yours. Truth isn't dangerous. Suppression is. He smiled like a man used to being obeyed. We don't want to make this official. I stared him down. Then make it personal. See how that goes. His smile faded. They drove off. Cole chuckled. I see retirement hasn't dulled your bark. It's the bite they should worry about. By then, Mason had begun writing me letters from Phase 2. Letters I never expected. Not just about training. About guilt. About honor. About his father. He wrote, I used to want to be a warrior. Now I want to be a wall. Something people can lean on. Something that stands when everything else falls. I read that one aloud to Cole. He nodded. Kid's either going to be a legend or a ghost. Then the attack came. Not physical. Digital. Every email in the archive wiped. My system fried. Even the cloud backup's gone. They knew how to hit us. But they didn't know Cole. The man had stored every file on separate encrypted drives in a safety deposit box 3 counties over. I smiled when I saw the empty screen. Because the silence they thought they bought was only a decoy. That week we planned. Not war. Not revenge. Revelation. We contacted a journalist, real one. The kind who'd been embedded in Fallujah. Who'd taken a bullet in Syria just to keep a photo card safe. Name Rachel Singh. She met us in the middle of the night at a truck stop in Arizona. Cole handed her the box. She said, if I run this, they'll come after me too. I looked at her. They already are. She nodded. Then let's make it worth it. When the article dropped, the title read, "The War After the War. Veterans Expose Hidden Scars of Shadow Ops." It didn't trend, didn't go viral, but it reached the right eyes. Senators, mothers, widows, young soldiers wondering why their brothers never came home. The world didn't explode, but something shifted. A crack, a question, and that's how all revolutions start. One morning, Kurt from the range showed up on my porch. He looked different, older, quieter. "I was wrong," he said. "About you. About a lot of things." I didn't say anything. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his veteran ID, Force Recon, 89 to 93. I raised an eyebrow. He nodded. "Some wounds don't show. Doesn't mean they don't bleed." He left after that. Sometimes an apology isn't loud. It's just true. That night, Cole poured whiskey for both of us. "To the dead," he said. "To the living," I added. We clinked glasses, and when we sat in silence, it wasn't the haunted kind. It was the kind you earn, the kind that only comes after fire. The morning Mason returned, he wasn't the same kid who had saluted me by the steel plate. He stepped out of the cab, wearing desert fatigues, his boots heavy with the red dust of training fields, shoulders broader, chin sharper. But it was his eyes that said it all. No longer searching for approval, no longer questioning whether he belonged. He'd been through the crucible. He'd found his edge. But edges cut both ways. He didn't speak right away, just embraced me. Then he saw Cole on the porch, sleeping with his feet up and his pistol resting comfortably across his lap. Master Chief Cole Mason asked, surprised. "Don't get excited," Cole grunted, cracking an eye open. "I'm retired, not dead." They exchanged nods. Respect between men who hadn't served together but still wore the same scars in different patterns. Inside, over coffee and bacon, Mason pulled something from his bag. A sealed envelope, marked confidential, unofficial eyes only. "I wasn't supposed to take this," he said, lowering his voice. "It's from the Phase 2 Command Archive. I copied it from an instructor's secure tablet while on gear watch." "You what?" Cole coughed, choking on his coffee. Mason shrugged. "They taught me how to move quiet." Guess I listened. I took the envelope, opened it. Inside were 2 photos and a typed memo. The first photo was of a village flattened clearly from a drone strike. The coordinates matched what we'd seen in Operation Black Phantom. The second froze my blood. It was a tactical briefing, recent, marked Phantom Resurgence, Alpha Phase Pending. Cole sat forward. "Tell me this ain't what it looks like." Mason nodded grimly. "They're starting it again. Same name, same mission, just with a new target. Africa this time." "They think the dust has settled," I muttered. "No," Cole growled. "They think they buried the witnesses." We all looked at one another. 3 men, 3 ghosts, and a choice. That night the plan was born. No vengeance, no glory, just exposure. But to do that, we had to break into a server, a secure defense contractor hub out in Nevada, run by Black Eco Solutions. Private sector mercs with Pentagon clearance and fewer morals than a street hustler. And we needed help. So I made the call. Her name was Vega, Cyber Ops ex-NSA, dishonorably discharged for ethical defiance, which basically meant she had morals, and the system didn't like it. She met us at a halfway house in Flagstaff, dressed in all black hair shaved on one side, the other braided like coiled wire. "This is reckless," she said after hearing the plan. "I love it." She opened her laptop and tapped furiously. "I can't get you inside," she said. "But I can crash their eyes. For 90 minutes. Enough?" I asked. Mason answered. "More than enough." Cole grinned. "I always wanted to rob the government one last time. We planned for 2 days. rented a rust bucket van, stocked it with gear from Cole's private armory flashbangs, signal jammers, non-lethal deterrents. We weren't killers anymore, just messengers carrying ugly truths. The night we rolled out the desert was quiet, the kind of quiet before a storm breaks. Black Eco's compound wasn't much just a concrete block on the edge of nowhere, wrapped in chain-link fences and watched by guards who'd traded ideals for contracts. Vega whispered through comms cameras down in 3, 2. You're invisible. We moved like shadows. Cole neutralized the first guard with a chokehold smoother than jazz. Mason bypassed the lock with a code I didn't want to ask how he got. Inside, the servers hummed Cold, Blinking Alive. Vega's voice crackled. Download everything in folder Phantom. Fast. Mason slid the drive in. We waited. Seconds ticked. Then, breach north wing. Alarms. So much for 90 minutes. They found us. Cole pulled Mason behind a pillar as a flashbang went off. Guards poured in. But we didn't fire. We ran. Not away. To the secondary objective. The real one. The hard copy vault. The one no one thought we'd reach. Inside were files. Boxes. Names. And at the top, Operation Phantom Officer Signatories. We grabbed it all. Then ran like hell. Smoke grenades, stolen ATV. Bullets bit the walls behind us. Mason drove. I rode shotgun. Cole manned the rear, smiling like he was 30 again. We disappeared into the dark. Back at the safe house, bloodied and bruised, we laughed. The kind of laugh that comes when you know you just woke the devil. Vega decrypted the files. They confirmed it all. The reactivation, the new targets, the billions in defense contracts set to be approved by silent handshakes. This time, though, we weren't waiting for a journalist. We uploaded everything ourselves, to the servers, to the web, to the world, unfiltered, unforgiving. Within 24 hours, the Pentagon issued a full denial. 48 hours later, a subcommittee was convened. By day 3, a general, the same one who signed the reactivation, resigned under health concerns. By day 5, veterans groups began marching. Banners read, Phase 2, never ended. Truth for the fallen. And just like that, the darkness we'd lived in for decades cracked open. I sat alone that evening, watching the sky bleed into stars. Mason came out holding 2 beers. Think it was worth it? Every scar, I said. He nodded, then asked, You ever wish you were young again? No, I said. But I wish the young didn't have to clean up our mess. He handed me the beer. To the ghosts, he asked. I raised mine. To the ones who remember. They came at night. 2 unmarked SUVs. No lights, no plates. Cole saw them first, always did. He'd been sitting in the shadows behind my shed, listening to the crickets and cleaning his sidearm. He didn't panic. Just calmly clicked the safety off and said, Showtime. I stepped onto the porch, Mason right behind me. He was in civvies, but stood like a soldier. Tall, calm, ready. 3 men stepped out of the first SUV. No uniforms, no rank insignia. Just suits, cold eyes, and the kind of stillness that said they weren't new to this. The tallest one spoke. Mr. Granger, we need to talk. You always bring backup when you talk, I asked. He smirked. We've seen what you did at Black Eco. Can't be too careful. Cole stepped into the light. Then maybe you should be. They ignored him. We don't want this to escalate, Mr. Granger. You keep saying that I said, but every time we speak you show up with more people and fewer morals. The man stepped forward. Let's be honest. You're making waves. That's a problem for people who've spent decades keeping things still. That stillness, I said, is made of graves. The man nodded as if impressed. You're poetic. You should have joined politics. I took a step closer, face inches from his. I didn't fight for politics. I fought for people who didn't have a voice. And now I speak for the ones who never came home. He tried to hold my gaze, failed. We're offering you a deal, he said finally. You stop publishing, you stop talking. We leave you alone. No more files, no more threats. Walk away. Mason laughed under his breath. You just threatened us and called it a peace offering. Cole crossed his arms. You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you? The lead agent glanced at him. You think this is a game? No, I said. This is war. You just forgot who started it. I handed him something, a USB drive. He looked confused. What is this? Everything you didn't find at Black Echo, I said. We made backups of our backups, redundant cloud networks, cold storage. And now that USB is blank. His face changed. We already sent the real ones. To journalists, whistleblower networks, international media. This isn't about threats anymore. It's too late for that. The agent stepped back, breathing harder. You don't get it, he hissed. There are things bigger than you. Systems older than any war. This was never about you. You're right, I said softly. It was about the truth. And now everyone sees it. They left without another word. They knew it was over. They couldn't kill the message. 3 days later it happened. Congressional hearings. Live. They subpoenaed contractors. Defense brass. An ex-CIA liaison. The questions were brutal. And then, unexpectedly, they called me, not in secret, on national television. The chairwoman, Senator Rita Dawson, looked into the camera and said, Mr. William Granger, retired U.S. Navy SEAL and whistleblower, has agreed to testify. My hands trembled for a moment, not out of fear, out of memory, because every word I spoke would represent the dead. The room was cold, oversized, cameras everywhere. I walked in, slow, my limp heavier than usual. People whispered, Was he the one from the leak? Is that the guy from Operation Phantom? I sat down, looked at the panel, and told them everything. I didn't read from a statement. I spoke from scars. I told them about Jacob, about Stanley Bishop, about the lies fed to us in briefing rooms that smelled like bleach and betrayal, about the silence we were forced to sign while the men responsible got promoted, got rich, got invisible. I held up a photo of the 15. My team, I said. My brothers. They died, thinking we were protecting something sacred. But we were just protecting someone's deal. A senator asked, And why speak out now? I looked at the cameras. Because the next war is already being built. And if we don't stop it, we'll lose more than lives, we'll lose our soul. When I left the chamber, the world didn't cheer. There were no parades, no medals, no grand speeches, but outside, waiting by the steps, were families, wives, sons, daughters, holding photos, holding hope. One woman hugged me. Her husband was in the same op. Died in the village I tried to save. She'd never known the truth until now. She whispered, Thank you for giving him back to me. I couldn't answer. My throat wouldn't let me. The following week, the bill passed. The Phantom Oversight Act. It created an independent task force for military contract transparency, put restraints on privatized warfare, and mandated mental health reviews for Black Ops veterans. Small steps, but steps. Mason called it the first real win. Cole called it a start. I called it a funeral, not for our mission, but for the silence. A month later, Mason returned again. This time, not just as a SEAL candidate, but with his Trident pinned to his chest. We stood by the range together, side by side, watching the wind move the dust. Phase 3, I asked. He smiled. Teach. Lead. Build something worth passing on. You ready? I've got ghosts on my side. I looked at him. Strong, scarred, still standing. You know, I said, some people will never understand what we did. He nodded. They don't have to. They just have to remember. The last scene I remember from that year was this: Mason setting his rifle on the bench, lining up the shot, and beside him a kid, maybe 12, asking, "Were you in the military, mister?" Mason smiled. "Yeah, but that's not who I am. That's just where I learned who I could be." There's a sound a bullet makes when it hits steel at 1,000 yards. It's not loud. It's not violent. It's a ring, clean, sharp, pure. The kind of sound that cuts through everything false. And for a brief second, the whole world feels aligned. Still. Honest. That was the sound we heard that morning on the range. Mason stood behind the scope, calm and centered. He'd made the shot without a word, just like I taught him. Just like we used to do when the only applause came from ghosts. Cole grunted, arms crossed. "Kid's better than you." I raised him to be, I said. It was his final day before deployment, real deployment. Not training, not simulation. He'd earned his Trident past SQT, and now he was heading out. But before he left, he wanted one last shot, one last lesson. The three of us sat around a fire that night. No mission plans, no strategy, just the crackle of flames and the occasional howl of coyotes in the distance. "You remember when this all started?" Mason asked. "Which part?" I smirked. "The shooting range. The classified file. The dead man's tattoo." He smiled. "All of it. It feels like another lifetime." Cole exhaled smoke into the stars. "It was. You burned the old world down, son. Now, don't forget to build something better." Mason looked at me. "What do I build?" I paused, then answered slowly. "Trust, integrity, brotherhood. And when they try to bury the truth again, you stand like stone." He nodded, but his eyes glistened in the firelight. "I'm not afraid to die," he said. "But I'm afraid of dying without it mattering." "You won't," I said firmly. "Not if you remember why you're fighting. Not for flags, not for medals, for people." The next morning he left. Cole and I stood on the porch as his convoy pulled away, dust kicking behind the wheels like history repeating itself. He didn't look back, because real soldiers don't, but I knew he felt us. We stayed until the silence returned, until the only sound was the creak of the rocking chair and the whisper of wind over the rifle barrel mounted above my door. Weeks passed. The archive we'd built, the ones who remember, became something more. A foundation. A place for whistleblowers, for widows, for truth-tellers and silent heroes. Cole ran the security. Vega handled the encryption. And me. I wrote, not reports, letters to every mother, every brother, every daughter of the 15. I told them the truth, not the sanitized version, the human one, the one with fear and failure, courage and redemption. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a traitor. I felt free. Then the letter came, postmarked from an undisclosed location, sealed in military gray, from Mason. Inside was a photo, him kneeling beside a child in a war zone, smiling. On his arm, a fresh tattoo, an eagle, a trident, and beneath it, 15 stars, one for each of mine. He'd carried them with him. My throat clenched. The back of the photo read, "You gave me your ghosts. I made them family." The news caught up eventually. Mason's unit made headlines rescuing hostages from a warlord's compound under fire outnumbered. Every man survived. The public cheered, but I knew better. They hadn't survived because they were SEALs. They survived because they were fighting for something real. I visited the graves again that fall. All 15, one by one. Jacob, Bishop, Torres, Lee. I placed coins, stones, letters, and then, in silence, I pulled out the trident from my box, my original one, scorched by time and blood. I didn't wear it anymore. I placed it at Jacob's stone and whispered, "We did it, brother." They finally listened. Cole died that winter, peacefully. Old Dog outlived his war. We buried him with honors, though he would have hated the ceremony. Mason flew back for the funeral, stood at attention, saluted. Then he stood beside me at the edge of the grave. He was the real deal, Mason said. We all were, I replied. But he never asked for thanks. He just wanted the truth outlive him. And it did, because of him, because of us. The range still stands, quiet, sacred. Young shooters come now and then, but sometimes when the wind is just right, I hear the echo of old rifles. See silhouettes in the mirage. Feel boots thudding across hot sand. Not ghosts, guardians. And when new recruits ask who trained Mason, they say, "Just an old man at the range." Quiet type, limped a little, but if you know what to look for, you'll see it. On the wall, a photograph, faded black and white, 15 men, sun in their eyes, dirt on their boots, smiles too big for the battlefield, and under it, carved into wood, they didn't die for a flag, they died for each other. Now, I rock slowly on the porch, coffee in hand, watching a new sunrise stretch across the red earth. And when people ask what we fought for, what we bled for, I say, so that one day no soldier ever has to choose between silence and his soul. That's what it means to remember, to fight without a rifle, to speak louder than classified files, to be more than the mission, to be human again. In the end, this wasn't a story about war. It was a story about truth, about what happens when the world forgets the quiet ones who carried its weight in the dark. It was about a man who could have died with secrets in his chest, but instead chose to speak and gave a voice to the voiceless. The meaning. That silence can protect, but truth can heal. That the most heroic battles aren't always fought with rifles, but with courage to face systems built on silence. And that legacies aren't medals or uniforms. They're the people we raise to be better than us. If this story moved, made you feel, made you think, don't scroll away. Hit that subscribe button to join a channel that honors real stories, raw truth, and the people who refuse to be forgotten. Drop a comment. What would you have done in Mason's shoes? Have you ever met someone like Mr. Granger? Someone who carried more than they let on. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story that needs to be told. Because here we don't just tell stories,